Hello, Lorcan here, and in this video I'm continuing on from the last one. We are going to take this basic rigidbody moving character using move position. There we go, he can jump, he can turn, he can do all the things. And we are going to swap out the model with an animated character, and we're actually going to get those animations applied and working. So let's go. Here I've got my example here. This is my character, Simple Rob. I've already set up all his animations here. I'll go over how to set these things up, but for now let's drag him into the scene. There we go, he's in the same spot. I'm going to add a rigidbody to him. I'm going to do the same settings as before, freeze the rotations, turn off the gravity because our script has its own thing for gravity. And I'm going to add a capsule collider. Now Rob's a bit thinner than the other guy, so, and he's also, let's actually move them side by side. Unlike the first one, as most player character models actually are, his pivot's at the floor at his feet, so I actually need to set the collider, offset it by the height by at least one. They're going to increase the height. Get it down, so there we go. That will actually come into our script, but I'll discuss that when that happens. So yeah, let's do that now. So let's immediately get the script working for this guy. So I'm just going to copy the component from the last one. And what you should see is, as I do this, it actually won't work immediately, and I'll go over why. So there we go, that's a bit of a problem. Let's wait a bit, but I think this will still happen. Why are you being a bit... Oh, anyway, so what you will see is he's floating now in the image, isn't actually all that good. And the reason for that is, if I lift him up, there you go, now he falls, is the Unity, because we originally made the script for this Unity capsule here, its center is in the center of its body, so when it sends a ray down to check if it's grounded, it's doing that from here. We need to offset it we need to actually offset that way to be a bit higher up, so it's actually in the middle of our new guy's body. So let's go to the code. It's very simple addition here. All we have to do is just there, where we set the waycast, we just add a vector 3.up, and that's 1 by default, and that's more than enough for what we need. And now I do this, the capsule probably won't work as well anymore, but guy here. Alright, that doesn't seem to be working exactly as I think it should, so when you have things like that happen, it's good to use debug.raise. Just gonna copy in. If there's ever a time where you have an error with something like vertex directions and like, always use a raycast. Basically, that will always help you actually see what's going on. It's outside of there. Okay, so okay, the capture got reset, so that's simply it. There we go, put it back at 1. And I'm doing this in playtime, so I'm going to copy these settings, go back out of playtime, paste those values in. Okay, so that's what it was. And there we go, so now he jumps. The older thing doesn't work anymore as well because its grounding way is just, it's never actually gained grounded value, but our new guy does, so that's all we really care about. We can delete the old one now. And now, so we've got that working now as we had it before, but now we actually want to get animations in there. So first thing is, I'll go over quickly how you actually get your animations in Unity. So the way I do this is I will have a model with kind of long strips of animations or multiple animations here, which you can, if you go to source take when you're in the animation, you can go through them. So if I go to movements here, you can kind of see it's a long sequence of multiple things. And usually I'd have the software I animated in open to the side so I can actually see what the frames are, but I'll just copy one of the ones here just as an example, but just show you how it works. So give it a distinct name so it's easy to find, set it to loop, and I'll just copy the moonwalk one. So I just set the starting frames for my specific sequence I want to take out, the longer one, set my ending times. There you go, got a little moonwalking feather. Sometimes you might do loop pose, which I think just kind of blends the beginning and ends if they aren't already, and that helps. You set loop time so it's set to actually loop in the animator. And if I leave this now, ask me to apply. There we go. Along this is where all the animations are kind of stored as smaller bits, and the one I added is, there you go, there at the top. So I've got my guy there, and I'm going to just drag the idle animation. There we go, idle loop. Just going to drag it onto him. That will just make that for me by default. So we're using Mecanim animations here. So that's Unity's, I say new, it's been about for a few years now, but it's newer animating system that lets you blend animations together, manage animating characters a lot better than the older system. So if we go and select Animator now, there we go. And so far we only have the one animation in there, so if I actually were to play the game now, he actually would be animated. It would just be the same idle loop. So what we want to happen is we want to be able to have the script let the animator know that the character's moving by speed, and we want the animator to play a running animation based on that speed. So let's actually set that up. So it's not, so first things first is let's actually just make the values in the animator, so speed. And while we're here, we are also going to be implementing jumping. So we're going to add a trigger called jump, and we're going to add a Boolean value called grounded. And these will come up later, so I'll explain when these come up, but okay, so let's go into the script. So now we've got these values, let's go into the script, and we're just going to implement the we're going to implement the running, and we're going to implement the jumping. So well, actually we get all this working script wise, and I'll show it working here and what that's doing. So let's open up the code, and we need to actually make a reference to the animator like we did the rigidbody. So I'm just going to do, there we go, animator, and I can just do the exact same thing I did for the rigidbody. It's in the same object, and there we go. And all I have to do is I'll do it in fixed update along with the other things. Actually, that's what I've got my final version. So go. I'm not going to use the final movement that's got all the vertical motion added into. I'm using just the input, the basic movement that's just the inputs, because what we need is we don't need the direction, we need the amount of difference there is, especially if you're using a joystick. This doesn't really mean much if it's a mouse and keyboard, but I just want it kind of clearer. And what this does here is, so that's getting the animator component, it's setting a float value. You can set booleans, floats, triggers, and so on, and strings actually, those could be useful. We want to change the variable called speed, and we want to set its value to we're getting the direction, we're getting its magnitude, so that is a float value, multiplied by our movement speed. And that, if I go, well actually, yeah, let's set up the rest of these. So I am also going to set, while we're here, I'm also going to add in a jumping trigger, and I'm also going to add in a, there we go. So I'm setting up all the animation things we're going to need really for our script. So we've given this script the ability to let our animator know, is the character currently on the ground, has the player triggered a jump to happen, and what walking speed is the player going at. So now we actually need to make the animator know what to do with that. So first things first, let's add in, drag this more so I can actually see. I'm going to create a blend tree, so you'll see what this is when I open it. So let's open this up. And a blend tree lets you get multiple animations and, as the name implies, blend them together. So if you have a walking and a running animation, you can, instead of just snapping from one animation to another, you can make it slowly kind of merge the two animations together based on a value. So in this case, speed. So I'm going to add, there we go, 2 motions. I'm going to add where's my walk? There we go. I'm going to add walk. And I'm going to add this here, which is just the static pose for the character. Now, I think because the static pose is actually got a shorter frame rate, it's going to actually shuffle very quickly in the blending, as you can see here. I don't want it doing that, so I'm just going to reduce its time frame. So there we go, to 0.1. And if you see here, this lets you actually see what the animator will do when it gets the value. Go check that. So there, we can go from a small shuffle if there's light input to a full on 1, a heavy input, and we can even add, because it's going to go beyond 1 because we added the movement speed into this, we can put the walk animation in again, increase that, and we turn off automated thresholds. I can actually set that to 1, set that to whatever our movement speed is. There we go, we can even have kind of like a basic, just using the walk animation to make a run here. So we have now we have the part of the animator that can actually take into account running and walking. But as you can see there, there's nothing actually telling it to get there. So what we need to do is we need to add a transition from the idle animation, that's the default, to the running animations. Let's actually name this to walking. And we'll also want to set a transition back. Now we actually need to add some conditions to this, or else it's just going to do this when it finishes this animation. So we want the conditions to be to go from idle to walking. If the speed is greater than 0.1, I mean, you could go smaller than that, but that should be enough. And we turn off has exit time, so we do that immediately when the speed goes up, not when the current animation is finished, and vice versa. Turn that off. If the speed is less than 0.1, we'll turn to the loop animation. So now, there you go. You can see if I move, he is now animated. If I stop, he does his own animation. You can see that there. And if I only move a tiny bit, you can see it's not doing the full walk animation, it's doing kind of a mixture of it and the idle pose. And if I do it fully, it is doing the full on 1. So we've got that working. Now we actually want to add in jumping, because for now he just kind of continues doing his running animation. What we want is when we want it when, you can see it here, we want it that when I press the jumping button, it does the start of the jumping animation. Whilst in the air, it loops through an in-air animation, and when it touches the ground, it goes back to the either the idle loop if there's no movement inputs being given, or to the walking animation if there is. So let us get that set up here. So I'm going to get the jump start. So that's the start of the jumping animation. The jump idle, so that's the middle. And the jump end, which, yep, so that's what we need. So I'm going to start with just making it functional by walking. So going to, again, turn off the exit time. And I'm going to go if the jump, so I don't need to add any extra conditions because trigger is just, again, a single thing that can happen. So if the trigger is set, go to the jump start. From there, go to the jump idle when that animation is finished. So this is a simple transition. We keep exit time on. And then from there, we make a transition to the end. And the condition for that is if grounded is true, it will go, and we're going to set the transition. We want it to be very fast transition. So this here lets you control how much time it takes to blend between animations, and I want it to go immediately from when it gets to the ground to immediately go to the new one. So just reducing that will do that. Goes to the end animation, and then it goes to idle, and we are going to set it so we're going to add an extra condition in. We're going to make it able to transition from ending the jump to going from idle or directly to walking. We're going to add a transition that lets it go from idle to immediately jumping, not just jumping when walking. And as I think you can imagine, it's just the same transition as you'd expect from both of those. And here it's literally just, again, if speed is greater, transition from the end of the jump immediately into walking, and if speed is less, then go immediately from the jump to the idle. And that should all work. There we go. So you'll be able to see it here. When you jump, it goes into the jumping start. It goes through to the idle. Now, because it doesn't jump all that high, you don't really see it stay in the idle too long, but if we have the character falling off a ledge for a long enough time, you would see it. Then it goes to the jump end, and then if I'm inputting in a direction, it will immediately go to the walking, or if I'm not, just go back to the static. On a note of actually, for whoever your animator is, this extra credits for people that watch that program, a very good series on animation. They do discuss when animating jumping, you don't really have too much time to animate at the start of a jump, just because you need to immediately respond to the ground. So the reason you would have an end animation is so that you can add a bit of an extra kind of crush when they reach the floor. So if anyone wants to see more about that, look up extra credits animation series, where specifically the one where they look at the Jack and Daxter games. They do a very good talk on things like jumping animation and running animation and the like. Anyway, so with that, we've got the animations for the character set. You can jump, you can walk around, you can move, and that's pretty much all you need, I'd say, for just the very simplistic basic character. You could expand this, add triggers for attacking. I've not used it here, but you do have the any state where you could potentially do, if you just wanted, if you had an attack and you wanted, when I press a button. Let's actually add that in. I'll just show this. I've not polished it off yet, but I can just quickly show you how this would work. Where do I have it? Here you go, headbutt. So I'm just going to add an extra trigger here. Trigger. So there we go. What any state does is when it just goes, if any of these transitions are met, interrupt whatever animation's going on now and transition to whatever's been set here. So if I go into the code and actually make something to trigger the so I'll just copy this because it's convenient. I'll go to the update, because this is in physics movement, so I can just make it an update thing. And what button? But I'll just use what I've got down for the reset button. I use elsewhere in this. Yep, I'm just going to copy and paste this because it's simpler. I just put. There we go. Now if I go into the game. So I was just showing you how, like, just thought that last minute. So now if I do, there we go. It's got a little headbutt attack animation. You can do that. I think usually you wouldn't do too much with the any state, just because you want to kind of be able to control. For example, you don't want him to be in the middle of the N, then able just to do the same headbutting animation. You might want a different attack for the N in the ground. But that kind of shows you how you begin to expand on what you've got here and add extra functions in. So yeah, there we go. That's the basics. I'll go back to my I'll just save this scene because I've not actually done that yet. Same scene. And I've saved the scene and also make a prefab. That's what you usually do. So if you just drag your model into the project somewhere, that's a prefab now. And if I opened up a new scene, dragged it into that new scene, I'd have the same character thing working, all the same settings. If I update this prefab, it will update all the iterations of that character in different scenes. So it's very useful to do this, always do this for things like players. And let's just go back to the, there we go. And now back to the base scene. So yeah, so now you've got it working the same as the guy here. So yeah, feel free to look at the code. There's one or two small additions. The code's slightly different than what you've seen there, but there's a few additions in the example here that I've decided not to go through, but they are there. If I open up, I'll quickly just walk over what they do. I've got things like, I've changed how the jumping works a bit, so it actually allows for a bit of extra time after you fall off an edge to allow you a bit extra time of being grounded before it actually stops you being able to jump. That's what the changes to this area allow for. So you're free to look at that and try and add that in if you want, but what you've got here should really do just the basics for a basic character if you want it to work. So there's the scene, that's the character. And yeah, I'll be doing more videos that will go over the other examples I've got on this project and different things to think about when designing a character and getting your inputs to work. But yeah, hope that was helpful and good luck making.
Yes.